Hello, this is my review for Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones from 2002. I'm going to start this film off, I'm going to start my review off by I'm going to talk about the positives, I'm going to talk about the negatives, I'm going to talk about what I thought the film did right, what I thought the film did wrong. I'm going to start right at the beginning. I'm going to start, once the opening crawl goes and then you see Padme Amidala's ship get attacked, we get to see Padme try and comfort her decoy for a brief moment, try and let her know that she did a good job. That was nice on her part. Then we of course get to see Palpatine and the Jedi somewhat happy that they're seeing Padme. That's that was a nice moment. Then we of course get to see Anakin and Obi-Wan in the elevator, and then they have that reference to the Gundarks, which was kind of cool. And then we of course see Anakin reuniting with Padme, and then they of course have that brief interaction with brief interaction with Padme about their role there, being are they security or are they detectives, and Anakin's more on the side of they're detectives and want to try and figure out what's going on. And they of course Padme says to Anakin, maybe just by having your presence here, maybe the mystery of what's going on will be unraveled. And then Padme almost gets killed by two worms, which, if I do say so myself, as a strategy for assassination, I wouldn't say that's the greatest. I would say that's a bit. It's a bit. I'd say it's more on the mediocre side. It's not very exciting and it's not very intelligent, in my opinion. That's more of a. That's something I would maybe can understand if they were in the middle of a forest, but in the middle of Coruscant, a city planet. Not sure that's I wouldn't say I was a positive that they used that the assassin used two worms. Well, of course, get an interaction between Anakin and Obi-Wan and the assassin, the changeling. They chase her. We get of course the chase scene in Coruscant with the yellow speeder. Then we of course get the iconic Obi-Wan death sticks. You don't want to sell me death sticks line. That was a pretty good line. Then we get the changeling gets killed by Jango Fett. The toxic dart. That was kind of interesting. Like the face that the changeling has suddenly becomes a lot more narrow. I thought that was kind of cool. We see Anakin getting somewhat angry at Obi-Wan Kenobi. Just as Anakin and Padme are talking. They're talking. Padme's packing her suitcase, and Anakin and Padme are just about to leave for Naboo. They leave as refugees. I would say that scene, the one where Anakin sort of flips out at Obi-Wan, I would say I'm sort of conflicted on that, in that he starts the scene by saying, he's grateful for having him and he's a great mentor, and then he says that one line to Padme, sometimes we must let go of our pride and do what is expected of us, or something akin to that. And Padme says to Anakin, Anakin, you're all grown up. I would say that was a nice, mature moment, but then I suppose the bit of anger, you can maybe say, was his inner rage just getting the better of him, sort of foreshadowing that he was going to turn to the dark side, perhaps. And then after we get that scene, we of course get a kind of funny scene with as Anakin and Padme are leaving. Anakin jokingly says, "Oh, we have R2 with us." He says Anakin says to Padme, "Well, at least we have R2 with us." I think, aye, just double checking here. On the right page, I'm starting here. Then, of course, we get to see Obi-Wan and his friend Dex, the guy with the four arms, in the American cafe, but it's set in Star Wars, which is kind of cool. Then we of course get to see the younglings. We get to see Obi-Wan go to the younglings, and then he explains to Yoda that he's lost a planet, and Yoda has that iconic line, "Truly wonderful the mind of a child is," which is a pretty cool line. And then we get to see Anakin and Padme walking around Naboo. We get a bit of their romance. But then we of course get the Anakin line, "I don't like sand," which I think George Lucas and Hayden Christensen have laughed about. They've joked around about the fact that maybe wasn't the greatest line ever written, to put it mildly. To their credit, they've joked about it. And then I would say we get that kiss scene in which Anakin and Padme are beginning to develop their love for each other. I would say that their chemistry was, at times it was all right, but other times it just felt a bit dry. It felt like there was nothing there, shall we say. And then there's like the fire scene when like Anakin says like, I can't breathe. He says, you're asking me to be rational. And then that of course is followed up by the scene where Anakin's standing staring out at the water and early in the morning, and Padme approaches him and says, your presence is soothing. That line was a nice line. It felt it showcased Anakin in a fairly disciplined manner. Like he's standing there with his hands behind his back, somewhat akin to a soldier. He's standing there, and then Padme approaching him, and she's got a gorgeous wardrobe of clothing that she's wearing. She's wearing one beautiful item after another. I would say that was mostly positive. We get, of course, the Anakin with nightmares of his mother. He talks about that briefly with Obi-Wan Kenobi earlier on in the film. Then he has another one. That was something that like we're building up to later on in the film. And then of course we get to see Obi-Wan Kenobi on Kamino. He sees the soldiers. He gets the Kaminoans say like magnificent, aren't they? And there's 200,000 of them, and there's more on the way. And then we of course get to see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jango Fett interacting with each other, and Jango Fett has that iconic line, I'm just a simple man trying to make his way in the universe. And I think just the way that, I think I'm going to pronounce his name wrong here, Tamora Morrison delivers his lines there, I would say that was solid. Like, I liked him as Jango Fett. I'm not 100% sure I like the fact that they introduced Boba Fett, and like, Jango Fett's the archetype for the clones, and he has a son, Boba, and then what we see in the original trilogy. I'm not 100% sure I like the fact that they tied everything together. Maybe some things, in my opinion, should have just had like an ambiguous, vague origin that we weren't fully aware about. I think that could have maybe what they should have done, in my opinion. We of course get to see Obi-Wan and Jango fight each other. That was an alright fight scene. And then we of course get Anakin and Watto reunion. And he explains that he sold Shmi Skywalker, and he says business is business, and they have a brief interaction, and Watto says to Anakin, could you help me take care of some deadbeats? And then he points him in the direction of his mother. That's his last scene in the prequel trilogy, I do believe. I think that's his last scene. We get to see him in Phantom Menace, then we get to see him in that one scene. And then we of course get the Yoda, Windu, Obi-Wan conversation when Obi-Wan's still on Kamino. And he explains that he thinks this is the bounty hunter they're looking for, and that Yoda and Windu learn about Sifo Dyas. Is she not still a member of the Jedi Council? He placed an order for soldiers 10 years ago, and all that jazz. And I thought that was like showcased a part of the Jedi Council that maybe like they're not invulnerable. They're not, like they're a bit, you might describe as like there's cracks in the shield of the Jedi Council, if you will, if you know what I'm trying to say. And then we'll of course get Obi-Wan, like you'll see him throw his tracker onto Jango's ship, Slave One, if that's the term that they're still using, I think. And then we of course get this chase scene all the way up until Geonosia, and we see them have that interaction in the asteroid field with the seismic charges. That was pretty cool. We of course get to see Anakin on Tatooine, where he reunites with C-3PO. We get to see Joel Edgerton as Uncle Owen, a young Uncle Owen. And I know him from the 2011 Tom Hardy film Warrior. That was where I first saw him. And then I think I saw him in this before, but that's what I most remember. That's what his most memorable role for me. I like Joel Edgerton. And then of course, I would probably say one of my favourite scenes in this entire film is the scene in which Anakin is searching for his mother. He's reuniting with his mother. We get to see him have a extremely brief interaction with his mother before his mother passes away. That was quite emotional. And then we get like Qui-Gon Jinn saying, Anakin, no. That was pretty good. And Obi-Wan Kenobi's exploring Geonosia whilst this is happening, and we get to see Count Dooku for the first time. I love Christopher Lee. He's a bit of a favourite of mine. I want to say about the Geonosians, I think the Geonosians were obvious, like bug influence. It was an influence by insects. When then we get to see Anakin back on Tatooine after he has his mum's funeral, or maybe before his mum's. It was after his mum's funeral when he's interacting with Padme, and he says to Padme, "I killed them. I killed them all, not just the men, the women, and the children." And then he lashes out briefly at Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you could say that's maybe another example of George Lucas trying to foreshadow his turn to the dark side, and that he would turn against Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then, of course, we get the transmission from the ship signaling that Obi-Wan Kenobi has what he's learned on Geonosia, and then he gets captured by the Geonosians. And then that after that happens, we hear Mace Windu say to Anakin, just protect the Chancellor. And then, of course, Jar Jar giving Palpatine emergency powers. What else happens? We of course have I've written down here, we have the final, Anakin and Padme attempting to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi in an unsuccessful manner. The conveyor belt scene, there's the Padme nearly gets smothered in lava. We'll have the Padme and Anakin, I love you scene, and then we'll have all this is taking place in and around the arena scene, the arena moment. And I would obviously say that the arena moment, I would say, is, in my opinion, perhaps a reference to Ridley Scott's Gladiator. If I had to put a bet on it, that was probably what the main inspiration was for that scene. And then this is a nice little moment I thought was a nice parallel that George Lucas managed to capture. Anakin and Padme falls out the gunship, and then Anakin also gets he tries to attack Dooku at first, and then he's on his back. He's suffering and she's on her back, suffering. Nice little parallel moment that you, of course, then get another reference in Revenge of the Sith. That's kind of similar to them both suffering at the same time. So you could maybe say George Lucas is quite a fan of trying to showcase duality, I think is the technical term for Anakin suffering, Padme suffering. You could maybe say that's what George Lucas did in Attack of the Clones and then Revenge of the Sith. And I would also say another positive would be when Anakin and Padme get chained up beside the 3 pillars, and Obi-Wan sarcastically says, "Good job." I thought that was Obi-Wan's got a few sarcastic one-liners, and I would say Ewan McGregor delivers them quite well. I like Ewan McGregor's delivery. And then I want to say about the monsters in the arena: the spider crab, the Japanese spider crab monster, the saber-tooth monster, and then the tri-horn rhino monster. I want to say I liked all of them. I liked all 3 of those monsters. Then you see Padme getting a scar, and her acting there was pretty impressive. I would say the acting there I would say it was better acting than what the rest of the actors in the film, in my opinion. I think Natalie Portman's quite talented. I think her acting was definitely more on the positive than the negative, in my opinion. But here's a negative. I would say it's that line by the Viceroy of the Trade Federation. "She can't do that. Shoot her," or something. I feel like that line was that wasn't a good line. That was a negative. I wouldn't necessarily say I was a big fan of the Trade Federation in the prequel trilogy. A positive would be another positive from the arena would be Anakin's forced Jedi mind trick on the rhino creature. All the Jedi emerging, Mace Windu putting his lightsaber up against Jango Fett, that was a positive. And then I would say that the Jango manages to kill the Jedi that was just about to attack Count Dooku, and then he spins his gun. That was kind of cool. Jango Fett kills the rhino, but then Mace Windu kills Jango Fett. I thought that was a moment where you see Count Dooku sort of put his hand on his chest, he was sort of caught off guard. And I've always kind of been curious about that, why that moment was more emotionally impactful for him, which is maybe you could perhaps say it was the fact that he killed Jango Fett in front of Boba. Maybe you could say that was just a red line that he personally held, perhaps, if I had to speculate. I like seeing Plo Koon, Kid Mundi, and the Blue Woman, who I think her name's Ayla Sicaria, or something like that. She dies on Felucia. I'm not 100% sure what her name. I think she died multiple times throughout episode 3, if I'm correct. You see her in the Clone Wars animated series. When we, of course, get the clones attack moment, when Padme says Luke, points to the sky and we get all the attacks. I thought the battleships were pretty cool. The Battle of Geonosis, and C-3PO has that kind of funny line of, "Oh, I had the strangest dream." That was alright. Boba Fett picking up the helmet of his dad. That was just a nice moment, a nice shot. I feel like it was a nice shot. And I thought, it's another thing I want to point out. The way in which they managed to age Obi-Wan Kenobi between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. In a Phantom Menace, he really did come across to me as a Padawan, young learner, inexperienced in some respects. Whereas here, he just felt much more mature, wise. Yeah, like he had grown, he'd aged. I felt they did a good job with that. We of course get the Death Star Easter egg. We get to see like the battleships take down, the big lasers take down that starship, and it falls into the ground, and it creates that big dust storm. And then I probably want to end it by talking about Anakin and Obi-Wan versus Dooku and Yoda. I thought that was a pretty amazing fight scene. I actually really like that fight scene, and I like Christopher Lee's acting. I think it was a wise move by George Lucas to have Christopher Lee talk multiple times throughout the fight scene, because I think he's got a great voice, and Christopher Lee just exudes wisdom. He just gives off an incredibly wise, gentleman-esque figure, and I think that's something that they rightfully utilised, in my opinion. I thought one of the maybe a negative or questionable act was like when Padme runs to Anakin and she hugs him. I've seen a few speculation videos online where people have wondered, how did Yoda and Obi-Wan react to that? And like, what was going on there? Was there something else that they were missing between the two? Or like, did they catch on early to Anakin and Padme's early developing relationship? And then of course we get Dooku and Sidious at the end, which I thought was just a fantastic scene. Just everything about that scene at the end. Attack of the Clones was fantastic. And then we get Padme and Anakin becoming a couple, getting married, but then we see R2-D2 and C-3PO at the wedding, and I want to say that was maybe a negative in my opinion. Like, why would they have them there? Couldn't that be like a way in which, if those droids got hacked or somehow the recordings were discovered by someone else, they could then find out about Anakin and Padme? I feel like they shouldn't have been there. They should not have been at the marriage for Anakin and Padme. I was a negative. I would say that's a negative. I would say overall that the shot that we get to see of Anakin and Padme getting married at the end of Attack of the Clones was beautiful. I don't know who the guy was that officiated the marriage, but that was a nice shot. And then I would say that the ending in which Sidious is overlooking the army and the film comes to an end, I would say that this film to me has grown on me. I would say this film's grown on me, and I would actually say that this film, I would give this film overall, it's not the greatest Star Wars film, but I would give this film overall maybe a 7 out of 10. Maybe a 6.5, 7.5 out of 10, somewhere around that. I'd have to think about it a bit more, but somewhere around the 7 out of 10 mark. I'm going to end it there, because I think I've talked long enough about Attack of the Clones. It's a film I enjoy. I could see myself rewatching it at some point again in the future. Maybe not for a while, but I would say overall I enjoy this film. Thanks for watching.